relaxation techniques that uses a subtle, universal, or yogic energy called pranavati in Sanskrit. And in English, we call this energy transmission. Transmission is really what makes heartfulness meditation dynamic, and it is a hallmark of heartfulness. Whenever somebody asks me, how do you define transmission? I think defining it is a little hard. I define it as the energy that gives life to everything around us, that gives life to the creation, energy that ebbs and flows within us, around us, it's everywhere. So a spiritual guide of caliber can then channel and transmit the subtle universal energy to any person that is open and willing to meditate on one's heart. I think usually the first thing people feel with transmission is peace. With more practice, the peace evolves to different levels and depths. I think it's a little hard to explain it in words. One truly has to experience it. And to get the most out of this experience with transmission, one has to have an open mind and an open heart. So I encourage all of you to engage in this webinar with an open mind and an open heart. So as Ravi said, the current guide of heartfulness, the current spiritual guide is Kamlesh Patel. We affectionately call him Daaji. He used to be a pharmacist, and so he has some healthcare background as well, which is really nice because he tends to put a scientific spin on spirituality. And I appreciate that coming from a healthcare background. So the agenda for the webinar is as follows. We will play some videos that introduce heartfulness to our viewers. The videos also introduce Daaji and our place of meditation called Kana. This will be followed by a Q&A session. We have some questions from our viewers. And then Daaji will guide the viewers through a guided relaxation and meditation, and then we'll conclude the webinar with some closing remarks. So as we await Daaji, I think we can go ahead and start with the videos.
Realize that all the emotions, all the intuitions were coming from here.
Before heartfulness and all this movement into the heart, people thought it was all in your head, that you had to balance your brain, you had to do all this, but they're really disconnected from the real source. Now we know in science that the heart actually communicates twice as much to the brain as the brain does to the heart. So the heart is really the controller.
We're trying to become one with everything, you could say. We're trying to achieve a state of unity, of oneness. And the only way to do that is really to become one with everything, is to merge with the whole, the totality of existence and what was before existence. The state in yoga that's called samadhi. Complete oneness with what was there in the beginning. And that is a state of stillness of consciousness. Patanjali, who was a great yogic sage, he said that yoga is the cessation of the vrittis in the field of consciousness, which means the cessation of all the movement, all the activity, all the turmoil in the field of consciousness, back to stillness. You can imagine a very still pond of water with no ripples, where your consciousness is like that. But how on earth to get there?
being a science fiction enthusiast, I always had this idea of the force, right? Let the force be with you, and it's this abstract idea, and it's fun and inspirational. But the beauty is that when I experienced yogic transmission for the first time, I kind of felt it.
Some of you would have heard of grace descending from the divine or the center or whatever you like to call it. It's a commonly used term in most religions. It's, a state of grace is a very profound state. And you can imagine that grace, like the sunshine, is flowing everywhere in the universe all the time. But then what happens with the sun, if you take a magnifying glass and you concentrate that sunlight into a spot, you're bringing attention of that sunlight to do something useful with it using a magnifying glass. All kids know this, I think. I used to go around with a magnifying glass as a kid trying to burn paper and do all sorts of things. So imagine that grace is descending, flowing the same way everywhere. But then there's a person, what we would call a yogi of caliber, who has the capacity to condense that in the same way, to utilize it for our evolution, and to transmit it to us through their heart into our heart, for our evolution, for our transformation, for our enlightenment, you can say. And that's transmission. The yogic terminology is pranahuti, which means offering of prana.
And actually, there is a clear proven fact in medicine that life is all about frequencies. It is about frequencies, and that's how transmission occurs. It's transmission of frequency from one end to another, and it's known in science. It's not that entire universe is working on the waveform theory. So I think it's the most scientific thing to know.
I had to go back to my hometown, and he was in Dresden, and he said, yes, I can make a transmission for you. We can meditate together. And I couldn't understand, like, we were in completely different cities, like how should we be able to meditate together? So it was really funny. But he said, no, it's like, it doesn't really matter. It's just time and space, we're still connected. We can still meditate together. And then I said, yeah, okay, let's try it. And I think it worked.
I would say this meditation helped me always to keep a kind of inner contentment and an inner guidance.
And one of the things that drew me to Heartfulness, because of course I was traveling around on a shoestring, was I could never have afforded to pay for any kind of teacher or anything. So, this fit me just to a T because it was free and still is free.
As time was going by and I was doing the meditation, I felt like really something was changing, because really before I was like a hot-tempered person, and when maybe I want to do something, maybe when you say, okay, we will meet somewhere and I'm waiting for you, like maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you're not there, I'll just go. So now I was like more calm and peaceful in such a way that so many things I was not shouting so much at people. I was not angry. So I think I started feeling like more at peace.
Oh my God. It's a game changer, believe me. What I was before and now, if you can see it, if someone has seen me, will say there are two different individuals. There are two different people living on the planet.
But I think the main thing is that it has given me a purpose to my life, so that anything that does happen, I know that it's not the end of the world. I know it's a process of having to go through these things. You know, like grief, when my husband died suddenly when he was 47. And it was a surprise. I had two kids. They were 16, 15, and 11 at the time, and it was a deep shock. But if it hadn't been for the meditation, if it hadn't been for my teacher at the time, Daaji, I think that the repercussions would have been much worse than they actually were. But it was easier for me to accept this circumstance and to move on. I think that there was like a faith of really being, it's really hard to describe, but I think that I came sooner to a point of embracing the pain of the grief and being able to move on sooner than I would have if I hadn't been meditating, if I hadn't had that deep connection.
You are raised to another dimension, and you do feel that there is something above and beyond yourself in this journey, which is a very, very special feeling. Because a lot of times, if you look at the modern day challenges we have of stress, loneliness, depression, even, a lot of it comes from this idea that I am alone. What is my purpose in life? Am I living up to my expectations? Am I, like, all of these struggles? And one of the things that I have been fortunate enough is when I feel even the slightest, shall we say, disturbance in the force, right, or challenge, all I have to do is close my eyes and just let it be.
In America, the National Institute of Health, which would probably 3 years ago never talk to me. I did a study just showing after one meditation what happens. We had a 100-person study, and we showed the physiology changed 30%. And they've actually asked me to come there this year and actually present my paper to the whole community. And usually they're really wound up into drugs, and getting a drug solution. But we're finding that that's kind of running its course, that people are finding that drugs are very limited. They might be good for short-term results, but long-term, the body forms an immunity to them. And the nice thing about meditation is your body never forms an immunity to your own neurology. So if we can fix it, then we have a great way of improving our lives.
From the start, it's been more important than food. In the morning before I have breakfast, I need to meditate.
I think the craving that we all carry is from the very beginning itself. The moment the universe was created, that craving is embedded. I was fascinated by Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa. Each time I read Ramakrishna's Gospel, I would cry like a child. This attitude was there from very early age. But I had no solution until I came at the feet of Ramchandra, Shahjahanpur. through meditation, we try to integrate various ideas, various cultures beyond religions without forcing any dogmas. Please don't trust me when it comes to fundamental things like this. Have a scientific approach. Look at it with a lot of skepticism. In the beginning, you must dissect it, you must analyze it. Let's plant some seeds of peace and harmony. When humanity's consciousness will change, they will be willingly inviting different level of consciousness. And when there is a critical mass or egregore reached, then the course of humanity will change altogether. We have opportunity to learn something out of this disaster unfolding in front of our eyes. The great Swami Vivekananda, during his times while he was walking around this Pavitra Bhumi of India, he saw so much of pain, so much of misery, so much of hunger. He said, the people of my country, they really don't need God at the moment, need food. At this hour, we need treatments. It is weakness on our part to offer prayer instead of serving the humanity. Prayers are great, but what am I doing? Prayer should be the last resort. This is my belief. When my mother is sick, is it okay that I go to a corner in my meditation room? I offer prayers to God. Please, God, look after my mother. Please help her. Will it be good? No. I'll have to take actions in my hands. I'll have to do something. I'll have to call doctor. Likewise, there are many innocent people around us. There are many citizens around us who are suffering. We can help them. Of course, we have embargo. We have been isolated from the rest of the society. But wherever possible, it is an opportunity to serve the people. Time for worship, we always have time for worship. But depending on prayers, when there is a war-like situation, it's okay to pray. It's okay to make sankalpas. I love that. But besides that, I would also need to extend my help services. All the Heartfulness members, all across the globe, they're collecting funds. They're also serving more than 25 to 30,000 meals a day to those who are needing. So I wish many people will join hands and serve the needy. It's a clarion call. How during troubled times we can come together. So with a lot of prayers to you all, that let us all become serving citizens during the times when they need the most. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Well, what a wonderful set of videos. I don't even think I've seen those. So I'm glad that Heartfulness was able to share that with us. We'll just wait for Daaji to get on board, and we can start the Q&A session. Namaste, Daaji.
Namaste, Swati and Dr. Kole. Good to see you.
Namaste. Pranam, sir.
Pranam.
Daaji, how are you doing with the lockdown in India?
Well, we are thoroughly locked down. Every little pocket is, unreachable. But we are in a safe haven in the Kanha ashram. It's a small village, almost 1,500 acres. And we are very few volunteers and members looking after this ashram, cooking food for the needy. I think we remain very carefully, distant from each other, maintaining this social distancing as our Prime Minister advocates. We are all safe here. We are doing quite well. Of course, it's very quiet and eerie at times. Because in such a big place, you can get easily lost.
Well, I'm sure you find it more peaceful as maybe fewer people to bother you.
No, not at all, not at all. It's a joy to meet individuals. To me, it has become my business to meet people.
That's true. You meet a lot of people.
If I don't meet, yes.
Daaji, we're going to dive right into the questions, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, please.
We have several questions.
Okay.
So we have several questions from the viewers. One, I think let's start with, there's a lot of definitions of spirituality. How do you define spirituality in simple terms? And how can spirituality apply to self-care and our emotional and mental well-being?
All right. Short answers. First of all, hearty welcome to all the API members and thank you for joining us. I also like to welcome all the physicians and healthcare givers from Fortis Hospitals, Kaveri, Agarwal Hospital, MaxCure, as well as PGI Chandigarh healthcare givers. Very welcome to you all. Often I get bombarded with this question, what is this spirituality you are talking about? I say spirit and spirituality are two different things. With spirit, you can get drunk and lose your awareness. With spirituality, you become fully aware. It's a drastic difference. With spirituality, you experience things. Personal experience is more important than stuffing our minds with knowledge that God is Sarvagyani, Sarvavyapi, Sarva, so many things, omnipotent, Sarva Shaktiman, Sarva Gyani, omniscient. But it adds value. This knowledge becomes valuable when I experience, and this experience is possible only through spiritual practices. Think for a moment. When we grow up, we were bombarded with this conditioning of our mind by our parents, grandparents, societies. And if you ask your grandfather or grandmother or your father, why do you believe in God, Papa? Then they'll say, oh, I believe because so many reasons. My shastras, my literature, my culture says so. My mother says so. But when you ask further question, why? There is no real answer to it. Say. Through spirituality, such a knowledge that has been, shared by our elders with a lot of love can be actualized. And that is all about spirituality. In religion, what do? We light up a lamp, burn some incense sticks, that too also rushing. You're always waiting for the next moment. And when you're too busy, you'll perhaps surrogate it to some priest. My father, he, when he was around 60 or something, and some of the pundits told him that your life is very, it's nearing its end. You better do some hope, some sacrifices and things like that. So, and he chose to do 1 lakh or 2 lakhs of Shivalinga and some Mrutyunjaya Japam in the temple. So he hired a pandit. He stayed in our house for the entire month of Shravan and did all these things. So, Papa, how are you going to benefit when somebody does this practice on your behalf? Would your stomach get filled and you will be satisfied if I eat on your behalf? Meditations and something that we become out of all these things, no one can do it on my behalf. I have to do it myself. See, somewhere along we have gone wrong. There has been a kind of curvature set in the religious practices world over. In religion, we externalize the practices, all these rituals. In spirituality, fortunately, it is always inward. You experience it. And as a result of this experiencing, you become something as a result of those experiences. See? So there's a big difference, and I wish more people will be spiritual. Religion, they've been killing each other. Religions, the factions, because of religion, has killed more people than this virus. Who is dangerous? Think over it, please. Spirituality unites us. But what sort of a practice must I have? It should be universal. And when I experience God within myself, you will experience God as original God, absolute God. You will not experience God as that you see in photographs or in some institutions where they hang the photographs. Nothing of that sort. You will have the fragrance of reality perfectly experienced in an unforgettable way. You cannot miss it. And you cannot lose such an experience because it becomes part of us. It starts breathing in us. So spirituality has a greater promise. Unity is the minimum thing. Greater things would be realization of God, where you totally merge yourself. And if I had to put the culmination of spirituality in one sentence, I'll have to use Kabir's explanation that it is like a raindrop falling in the ocean, becoming the ocean. So this process of raindrops becoming ocean can happen when you adopt spirituality. When you adopt religion, you become your own islands. I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Jew, or I'm a Catholic. So many other identifications can be given because of all that, but you will never be what we ought to be. Universal. You get it, Swati? Do you need more
Yes.
on that?
No, I think that's a really adequate and explanation. That actually brings us to our next question. A lot of people, especially in my generation, they do not believe in God because of the fact that religion has probably destroyed the morality of God. So do we need to believe in God to benefit from meditation?
Well, I love that. What you have just said, that most children, most youth today don't believe in God. I think they're quite honest about it. Also, some faults also lies on on our soldiers. Somewhere along, the elder generation have gone wrong because what they preach and what they actually end up doing, the two things, the paradoxical, the opposite. So the children lose faith. When you say, as I was citing an example, please believe in God, He is everywhere, He knows everything. But your lifestyle shows differently. Speak the truth, but every time you go on lying and children witness it. Okay. So my request to all, whether you are a believer or non-believer, actually non-believers of God are quite honest. Do you know that? If you don't experience, how are you going to say, I believe in God? It's not possible. And if I borrow this information that God exists, it's of no use until it becomes reality for me. So it's a good beginning for youth that, okay, I don't believe in God, but keep searching. Right now, I don't believe it, but maybe I will believe when I do experience it. So it's a scientific approach. When I find a way and say, okay, if I do this, when my heart mixes with a prayerful attitude, and when I sit with a receptive heart and try to receive the grace and see what I become as a result of it. If I experience, then we can say, yes, I feel the presence of God. See? Then that will convince them. So let us approach spirituality with a scientific background. See, that when I meditate, when I close my eyes, does it change my consciousness? Does it change my awareness? Do I become softer as a result? Do I become more poised and centered or more compassionate? Does my weaknesses dissolve as a result of doing something? Then I say yes. There is something in it. Maybe I'm yet to experience God because all that I've experienced is peace and deeper peace and more of it. But when am I going to experience God? Well, it will take you one day. This settledness, this compassionate heart, the loving heart, which is full of purity, that will definitely weave our destiny with our Maker. It will take us there. But if I remain in a state of belief that I believe in God, belief masks the reality. Let me explain. When you're walking around and you see a bear outside your backyard, do you really have to believe that I believe in the existence of bears? No, I have seen the truth. I've seen the bears. But when I have never seen, I'm in India and my children have never seen bears, then they'll say, oh yes, I believe in bears, but I have never seen them. But the day you see them, you'll stop believing. You can say confidently, they are alive, they are there, they are very much there. So belief in God is also like that. See, the day you experience, you'll stop believing in God. You will claim loudly, He exists. I don't have to believe. I don't have to prove anything. And neither does God. His ego will not be hurt if you don't believe in Him. Parents today, they get hurt easily when their opinions, their way of life is not respected by children. They get offended. But God is never offended just because you don't believe. He doesn't care whether you believe or not. But believing in God should be a neutral approach, should be neither positive nor negative until we experience. In meditation also, I think when we approach and try to experience the presence of God, the first mistake people make is they assume the form of God. For example, many Sadgurus and yogis, they advocate Shiva. But imagine Shiva himself is meditating. Haven't you seen? They portray Lord Shiva, the huge statue, in eternal meditation, seated on top of Kailash. Whose imagination is that? I am not saying he doesn't exist, but the form is a problem. You start worshipping Shiva, but have you ever thought about on whom this Lord Shiva is meditating? Similarly, Lord Krishna. People say, oh, I got to meditate on Lord Krishna as a Yoga Purusha. But in his Yoga Purusha form itself, you notice him with closed eyes in deeper meditation. Upon whom is he meditating? So whenever we approach, close our mind, eyes, and approach towards our heart and say, okay, let me experience presence of God. The moment we assume forms, that he is, or even to think that he's a male or a female will be a disastrous outcome of it, because he's neither of it. It's a principle. So imagining form to fit our conditioning will defeat the purpose. So whenever I sit in meditation, I always had this approach that, God, please let me experience your presence the way you want me to experience, not the way I have been conditioned that he should be in a Shiva Linga. And if you imagine Shiva Linga, God, God forbid, you will, you know the reality of Shiva Lingam? Linga means male sexual organ. Would you meditate on male sexual organ of Shiva?
No.
People say it's a creative energy. I understand it's a creative energy, but all these practices of worshipping Shiva Linga and later on Lingas, it is offshoot of Tantra Yoga, where a lot of tantrics brainwashed innocent girls and say worship this and worship that, and they brought in this linga, and they also start making them start worshipping their own. That is the downfall of Hinduism. Imagining any form doesn't matter, and worst of all, to think of a sexual organ in eternal conjugation is a blasphemous approach in approaching God. So you are all educated people. Think, please think before you worship anything. Lord Krishna's form that you see, it's an indicator. But you start imagining that Lord Krishna is romancing with Radha. This is pathetic imagination of all these artists. It's a divine, pure love. But how are you going to imagine all that? You imagine that he's in the form of this actor and she's in the form of this actress, and you bring all those imagination even during meditation. So how are you ever going to be successful with true meditation when mind is busy imagining? So all throughout your meditation, you will go on imagining one figure after another figure. Your meditation, no wonder, will fail and continues to fail. So we have to have a neutral approach. Like God, if you are there, please let me experience. At least come to a neutrality, neutral ground, and say, okay, I like to approach God, yes. Though I don't know whether he's really there or not, good. It's a better situation. Now you approach with an open heart, without any conditions. then there is a possibility of finding the real truth. So good, Swati. People don't believe so easily. I'm very happy.
Well, you know my generation, it's a little bit more difficult to convince us. Um, but I think,
But
meditation.
didn't you like my argument?
I did. I think your argument says keep an open mind, keep an open mind and an open heart. I don't know if before I started practicing meditation, I didn't really believe in God. I don't think I do now. I'm not sure. But I do know that my meditations are much better than they used to be 10 years ago, and they are much deeper. And I experience various levels of peace. Can't, always explain it in words, but maybe one day, like you said, I can experience it. Um, that
Good
moves
luck.
us to, thank you. That moves us to, I think, a question for beginners. Um, right now, as you know, it is a time of a lot of stress for everybody, not just healthcare workers, but people who are losing their jobs, people who are taking care of kids as they're working from home. And there's a lot of fear, worry, and grief. And during these times, even though we know that meditation will help reduce our fears and anxiety, I think it's very tough to sit down and meditate, as a beginner or even as an advanced practitioner when your mind is racing and stressed. So how do we solve this dilemma? Where do we begin when things around us are so chaotic?
When the real trouble starts, then it's quite difficult actually. For example, when you're angry and people say, please calm down and meditate, you'll be all right. But when you are angry, when you are so depressed, and someone tells you to meditate, maybe you'll close your eyes, but your mind will be busy on the reason why you are angry. Your mind will remain more occupied on the reasons for depression because your mind is now left to itself with closed eyes. You will think only of the problem. But with heartfulness way, it becomes quite easy. With the help of a trainer who is able to transmit this pranam, is able to divert your attention at least temporarily and bring some amount of relief. See, so you may not worry just because um, certain things are happening or not happening. But because of this meditation, a slight diversion. It's like, when you have this pain and you use some counter irritant, like Bengay. It draws your attention on a peripheral irritation. The deeper pain will be forgotten for a while. Similarly, meditation also changes our attention from the main problem, and now you're trying to tackle something which is more peaceful, trying to become more receptive towards that peacefulness. So it is like you are anesthetizing the whole thing. And this is possible only through the help of the trainer when you're face to face with the trainer or you are seated remotely via Zoom or via Skype or via some video conference. Or if you don't have any of this, you can use one of those apps and connect with our trainers. They're always available throughout 24/7. And they will be able to help us go through all these crises. Even if you are a non-believer of God, it will still help you. There is no prerequisite for feeling the benefit that you must be a believer. No, it need not be. When I have a headache and I take Tylenol, do I have to believe in all that? No, Tylenol will do its job because that's how
pharmacology of acetaminophen works on my brain cells. Likewise, how this pranahuti works on my spirit, on my subtle bodies. It's a beautiful thing to observe. It thoroughly expands our consciousness. Let me explain. You may even ask, what is this consciousness people talk about? Many people have tried to define consciousness, but the simple one that I find is the degree of our awareness, and for that fact, the degree of unawareness that we face. The great Swami Vivekananda, he mentioned sometime in 1893 that the purpose of all spiritual practices, doesn't matter which practice you follow, it has only one goal, that whatever is my available consciousness is there, I should be able to expand it, period. And whatever this available consciousness is there, it is nothing but a fine film of water layer which is sandwiched between two giant oceans. Can you imagine how thin film we are living with? Our available consciousness is sandwiched between two giant oceans. Imagine Atlantic Ocean above and below the Pacific Ocean in a very fine film of consciousness. And he said, I should be able to expand this fine film of consciousness, allow it to fly into superconsciousness, and allow it also to dive deeper into my subconsciousness. This is possible with the help of this pranahuti. So it doesn't matter, as I said, whether you're a believer or not, it will help you to sail through various crises and divert your mind towards what is nobler, which is goodness, which is more rewarding, which is more lasting, and it will give you a lot of contentment. So please try it. You will not regret, I assure you. Try it at least 3-4 times before you make it part of your life, before you even reject it or before you even make part of your life. Try it for at least 3-4 times and see how it changes your consciousness.
Yes, I think we're going to do a guided relaxation. I think we have no questions in the chat panel, so maybe I have time to ask one more question before we do the.
So I have a question from a. I have a small question. Probably you already answered it. The question was, you're struggling to feed your family, children, no job, no income. I think Swati mentioned similar thing, stressful situation. How do you meditate when your material needs, bodily needs are not met? You're struggling. How can we transform into the meditative state under the stressful physical conditions?
It is not possible. It is not possible to meditate, at least in the beginning, when you are going through hell. And that's what I had said earlier also about Swami Vivekananda. While he was, doing parikrama of our country, Holy Land, and when he observed the poverty and hunger, and famine taking over and destroying lives, he said, people of my country, they don't need God. They need food on the table, the basic requirement. He could see people walking naked. And you have seen also, you must have read how he and his Guru Bhais, all his colleagues around Ramakrishna Paramahansa, they were so poor. There were days when they had to go outside. They would change clothes. They'll borrow from another person and go out, come back, wash it and give it to the person who was owning it. And when the other person has to go, they'll change the clothes again from the other person. So I think when you lack basic necessities, it is extremely difficult, rather impossible to meditate. It's an acute problem. Just as that's why I'm sorry. Just that's why Kabir used to say that दुख में सुमिरन सब करे, सुख में करे ना कोई, सुख में सुमिरन जो करे, दुख काहे को होई. So I'm trying to address to all those guys who are well off. Try and vaccinate yourself against all these mental problems that can arise out of lack of things in life. Don't let the lack of things in life change your mental status, your emotional status, your spiritual status. So the preparation ahead of time, see. Like, this they have nice proverbs in India. One of them is in Gujarati they say, "Aag lage tyare kuo khode," meaning there is a fire and now you're trying to dig a well to put off the fire. That is not preparedness. See, one of the reasons I don't know right or wrong, I'm not worthy or capable or professionally correct, but BCG vaccine that has been given all across India has proven beneficial even during this present crisis. They attribute to BCG vaccination that there is less of this virus infection in India. Anyway, this is besides the point. But as to answer it very simply, those who lack the basic necessities of life, they cannot meditate. And I sympathize and I do offer my prayer. Let us all pray that they come out of this poverty. There is no curse like poverty. It makes you helpless.
So, like you said earlier, that when your mother is ill, praying is not going to help. You have to do all the action first and then pray. So, preparedness is very important. We have two more questions from the chat box. Does the group prayer, group meditation help everybody? I think that's what you were talking about, Ahuti, Pranahuti. Please go ahead.
It does tremendously. Ravi, this group meditation helps tremendously, actually. I propose group meditation right now after this Q&A is over. Let us all meditate and experience, and at the end of this meditation, offer the prayer. When the mind is so pious, mind is so thoughtless, or mind is without any worries and anxieties after meditation, that we offer prayer with a calm, peaceful mind and connect with God. Please, God, help all those who are in need.
Okay, we have last question before we go into the meditation, which is really the essence of his whole program. The concept of religious rituals, that they discipline your mind to worship further than just idle worship, go into meditation state. Is that necessary or sufficient, idle worship?
It is the beginning, but not the end. We can begin with something. It is like, teaching a child how to write alphabets. He'll have to learn alphabets before he starts reading Gita. He'll have to learn alphabet before you master the Bible. Forms are necessary in the beginning for children, especially in those ritualistic families. But it will not give an everlasting confidence in children that yes, there is God. You have seen Swati talking about all these rituals performed by parents, but it doesn't rub off on their children. It only shows the effectiveness of such worship. Because our Vedas, our Upanishads, our Gita says a very fundamental thing. We must transcend akar means form to nirakar, to formlessness. But all our life, until we breathe our last, we go on worshipping the form without going into or transcending the formlessness, which Lord Krishna talks so highly in Gita. He said, in order to worship me, who is beyond qualities, beyond form, you'll have to take me in your heart and meditate on my presence.
As a psychiatrist, I like to answer questions in metaphor. my feeling is rituals is like a training wheel. When you're trying to learn riding a bike, you put a training wheel, but you don't continue to use the training wheel, you get rid of the training wheel.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful example. Thank you. I will
You're
use
welcome.
it in my talks now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I,
So
I
if you
like
want
that.
to, thank you. So Swati, I think most of the
I
chat
think,
questions
yes.
are put. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think, thank you, Ravi, and thank you, the group, for asking such great questions. Thank you, Daaji, for answering, obviously. I think we can, since it's been an hour, we can move forward with the experience with meditation. So, if I, if everybody just wants to kind of sit comfortably, you can turn down the lights in your surroundings if you need to. Um, you can gently close your eyes and follow along with Daaji as he starts the relaxation. So Daaji, I will leave it up to you now.
All right. So let's close our eyes and be receptive with our heart. I'll first walk you through the process of relaxation, and then immediately after that, we get into meditation. Please pay attention to your feet and imagine that energy from Mother Earth is entering through your feet and helping you relax. Allow this energy to move upward to your ankle. Feel the relaxation there. Let this energy move upward further, your calf muscles and your knees.
We gonna fight corona ఏదేమైనా చిన్నదిలే మనలో ఉన్న ధైర్యం కన్నా జాగ్రత్తలు పాటిస్తూ ఎదిరిద్దాం చిన్న ఏముంది విలువైంది మన ప్రాణం కన్నా నీ చేతల్లోనే